Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and welcome to the Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at BDO USA, but this podcast is my personal passion project, completely separate and apart from my day job, but reflect the same passion that I exhibit everywhere for teaching, mentoring, and helping others succeed through simple, impactful lessons. It is my hope that you'll walk away with practical takeaways to help you on your leadership journey. Thanks for being a part of this community and for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. When business slows down and teams seem stuck, most leaders start looking for the problem everywhere except the one place it usually lives: in the mirror. I've watched this pattern play out countless times before. When revenue is strong, everyone looks competent, and the organizational machine appears to hum along nicely. But then, business softens, oversight increases, and suddenly the cracks become canyons. Leaders start questioning team capabilities, wondering if they have the right people in the right seats, and diagnosing resistance to change. But here's what they're missing. Your team isn't resistant. You are just not clear. The most dangerous time for any organization is when revenue masks underlying problems. When the numbers look good, nobody asks any hard questions about alignment, strategic clarity, or whether the vision is actually cascading through the entire organization. Success becomes the enemy of introspection. But when business slows, leaders suddenly want more reports, more oversight, more visibility into what teams are actually doing. And that is when they discover the train derailed miles ago. Teams have been operating in silos, each convincing that they are doing the right thing, but without any real alignment to a clearly communicated strategic direction. The uncomfortable truth is that what looks like team dysfunction is often a leadership failure. Without clear strategic direction that flows from the top, you cannot have clarity around roles, around expectations, or how individual efforts connect to organizational success. It's mathematically impossible to have alignment when the foundation just doesn't exist. Here's what happens when strategic communication fails. Teams create their own kingdoms. Business units become individual fiefdoms and developing their own interpretation of what success looks like. Line managers start questioning their own competence when they can't get their teams aligned, not realizing the problem isn't their management skills, but rather the absence of clear direction from above. I call this the slow creep to waterfall effect. These alignment issues don't appear overnight. They develop gradually, often invisible until external pressure exposes them. And when that happens, the breakdown is swift and devastating. The warning signs are actually all there if you know where to look. Employee satisfaction surveys reveal the disconnect. One-on-one conversations, when conducted with genuine curiosity, authenticity, rather than judgment, surfaces the confusion. But these tools only work in environments where psychological safety exists. And that's where the catch-22 emerges. If you haven't been clear about strategic direction, how can you create the psychological safety necessary for honest feedback? In other words, if teams don't trust that you will receive difficult truths constructively, they will tell you what they think you want to hear. The only exception might be anonymous surveys, but even then, you're often hearing from people who've already checked out mentally but stay because they need the job. The solution requires something most leaders struggle with, and that is authentic vulnerability. You see, when alignment issues surface, the first instinct is often to protect oneself, save face, or find someone else to blame. But the teams that turn around fastest are led by people that are willing to say the following: I may not have articulated our vision clearly. I may not have communicated our direction correctly, and I may not have prepared you for success. To be clear, this isn't about self-flagellation or undermining your authority. It's about modeling the kind of leadership that actually builds trust. Teams need to know that their leaders are human, that they recognize when something isn't working, and that they're committed to fixing it rather than finding scapegoats. The smart leaders I work with usually know deep down when the problem is theirs. They got to their positions by being perceptive enough to recognize those patterns early. But admitting it externally often feels risky. What if the board loses confidence? What if teams sense weakness? But I say the opposite is true. Teams see strength in leaders who can diagnose problems accurately and take ownership or accountability of solutions. So how do you audit your own strategic clarity? Well, I want you to start with these very practical steps. First, examine the foundation. Can you articulate your organization's core purpose, values, and vision in a way that directly connects to daily work? And I'm not talking about the polished version from your website, but the operational reality that should guide decision-making at every level. Next, test the cascade. Are your middle managers equipped to translate strategic direction into specific expectations for their team? If they're struggling with alignment, the problem likely isn't their management competence, but the clarity of what they're supposed to be managing forward. Third, create feedback mechanisms that actually work. Employee satisfaction surveys can expose leadership gaps, but only if they're anonymous or conducted in environments with genuine psychological safety. Ask specific questions like, is the leadership team communicating our direction clearly? Do you understand how your role contributes to our strategic goals? And what barriers prevent you from doing your best work? And fourth, establish employee excellence hubs. Identify team members who show aptitude, capacity, and willingness to drive organizational improvement. Give them space to surface issues and recommend solutions. These groups often see problems and opportunities that leadership teams miss entirely. And here's the diagnostic question every leader should ask themselves. Is this team and this company better off today because of the work that I have done in executing our core purpose, values, and vision? Answer honestly. Not in a room full of people, not in your next board presentation, but in the quiet moment when you're alone with your thoughts. If the answer is yes, if you can point to specific ways your strategic leadership has made the organization stronger and more aligned, then team resistance probably has other root causes worth exploring. But if the answer gives you pause, if you realize that teams aren't better off because of your strategic communication, well, then you found your starting point. The leaders who get this right understand that strategic clarity isn't a one-time communication event. It's an ongoing discipline that requires constant reinforcement, translation, and adjustment. They recognize that when teams seem resistant, the first question isn't what's wrong with them, but rather what haven't I made clear. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of managing resistance, you start building alignment. Instead of questioning capability, you start improving communication. And instead of protecting your position, you start strengthening your organization. Your teams want to succeed. They want to contribute meaningfully to something bigger than themselves, but they can't hit targets they can't see, and they can't align with vision that has not been clearly communicated. The next time you find yourself frustrated with team resistance, take a step back. Look in the mirror and ask yourself whether the problem is really their inability to execute or a misstep on your part to provide the strategic clarity that makes execution possible. The answer might be uncomfortable, but that that is also the beginning of real leadership. Remember, leadership isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. See you next time.